and welcome to the Unconventional Intentional Homemaking Podcast. Today we are going to be talking about neurodivergency and the home, and that's all about how your home runs, what needs to be implemented, any changes you need to make, and basically how we run our neurodivergent home. But let's start by introducing ourselves. My name's Issa, and we highly suspect I have ADHD, if not autism too. But I'm not diagnosed because that's actually quite a long and drawn out process. Hopefully one day.
Hello, I'm Blaise. I am diagnosed autistic and dyslexic. I have a whole host of other comorbid conditions that we have to manage that do also affect the home. I think between the two of us, that assumed diagnosis, because it's all about those symptoms. And that doesn't mean that those symptoms are less impactful, less legitimate, or less real, just because you don't have a piece of paper.
No, the symptoms are still there. It's just finding out the cause of them, and this is where we currently suspect that my symptoms are. So what we do plan to talk to you about today, and what we don't plan on talking about today, is we're going to be talking very much from our own experiences. We cannot speak for all neurodivergencies, because there are a lot more than just the ones that we know about, or that we have experience in. And we're also not going to talk a lot about the experience from a child's perspective or for caring for a child with a neurodivergency, because we don't actually have a lot of experience in that.
You know, other than we were children
once, yeah. With the same symptoms, because that's it. It doesn't go away.
It doesn't.
It's always there.
It would really be interesting looking back, and if anything, talking about what would have helped more. But other than that, that's just a theoretical that we can talk about, and that's...
Yeah, but we don't have any hands-on experience of caring for people other than each other with neurodivergencies.
That's a lot of experience for you. Like, you look after me really well.
To be fair, you know exactly what you need, which really does help.
Yeah, that is true. I've done a lot of self-reflection and self-work, and being able to identify my needs and vocalise them in a suitable way makes a massive difference.
Which I think is massively helped by you finding out. I mean, it would have obviously been helpful for you to know when you're a child, but because you were diagnosed as an adult, you were able to put that thought processes in as you went through the process.
To be fair, so I was diagnosed with dyslexia around age 9. So I was diagnosed as relatively early with dyslexia. And I think that the help I had through my dyslexia growing up made it easier for me to advocate for myself once I had my autism diagnosis, which wasn't until I was nearly 30. So I've only had a diagnosis for just over 10. So I spent the first almost 30 years of my life just being weird and not knowing why.
Which actually quite different from my experience, in that my experience of ADHD is that when you are a high masking somebody that does well in school, you're generally ignored, because I didn't have anything that really stopped me from doing average or slightly above average. I quite like learning.
Other than the fact that everyone took one look at you and went, you're not achieving what you could achieve. And I've had that my entire life as well.
I have had that my entire life, but because I was achieving enough, no one really cared.
Yeah.
It was I wasn't ever supported to achieve more than what I was achieving.
Yeah.
It was hey, you could do better, I wonder why, never mind, you're doing well enough.
There's a lot to be said about that, because I think that's why a lot of people get to adulthood not having a diagnosis. Anyway, this is not about that. This is not about how it impacts the home and homemaking, as much as we would love to go on and on about.
Yeah, this is a topic we can talk about a lot. Yeah. If you are interested in any other aspects of it, then let us know, because we can talk about this forever. So, if we get back to homemaking for a minute, is how does neurodivergency affect homemaking?
Homemaking? We should talk about homemaking in our homemaking podcast. That's a novel idea.
We could give it a try, you know. I know I'm highly distracted, but...
I think that leads on to the first point of the executive dysfunction, particularly for you. That's particularly prevalent for you.
It is.
The amount of times my life is just spent following you around, closing all the lids properly, and closing doors and cupboards, and just, it's like you get halfway through a task and just go close enough and meander off.
That's pretty much it. Is that on board now?
I'm bored now, I can't be bothered to twist the milk lid all the way on. And then, of course, when I come to then undo something, it's the amount of times things have fallen over and then I've been like, oh, it's fine. No, that's not, because that lid's not on.
I don't like closing cupboard doors, I will admit it. I have a real aversion to it, especially if I know I'm going to be opening it again. I really hate them.
Our kitchen is not big enough for you to do that, because then I walk into them. I'm dyslexic. Spatial awareness is a known impact.
So there are some challenges when you have different challenges and needs in a house.
Oh, especially when they're competing.
Yeah.
So we particularly have some things that impact each of us in different ways. So for me, I'm highly routine focused because of my autism. So routines are super, I cannot emphasize just how much, like, if I get into work and I don't get the desk that I want, that's it, my day is ruined. Because I have a pattern that I need to walk, and every time that goes right, my brain is happy. But if it's not, my brain is very sad.
I'm aware. I'm aware.
So, how do routines affect you with ADHD?
I'm not very good at them. I either forget them, so I am just not very good at them. I don't know if it's that I get bored of them. I don't know if it's that I just struggle to maintain the idea in my head. But like, even forming a habit, I'm not very good at it, because if I take 2 days off from a habit that I think's really ingrained, that's it, it's gone. I've got to relearn it.
Yeah, I think that it's that getting that bored, and for someone with suspected ADHD, novel is really important.
Yeah.
And so we've got to often shake up the routines. Hey, I guess that's why you run a YouTube channel where you keep trying different routines out and tinkering them and talking about them and changing them. Which works pretty well for the YouTube channel, luckily.
It does, and it means that you do at least know what routines I'm following currently.
Yes, because yeah, you've got to plan that for the videos, which I guess neurodiverse household, start a new YouTube channel apparently is the answer.
But we're also lucky in that your need for routine isn't entirely inflexible. You can be flexible as long as you understand why, are given a certain amount of notice.
Oh, that's a whole process.
If there are changes to plans, I have to go in quite softly and go, hey, something might be changing. Go away for a few minutes, then come back and say, hey, this is changing.
Yeah, I have to have like pre-noticed change that something's likely to change, and then I know as soon as she's like, something might change, I know there's pretty much 80% chance something is going to change. But I've already started to decouple that expectation from my response.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of reasonable adjustments at work, and one of them at work is you will give me notice, like 2 weeks notice, if you're going to change any policies that are going to affect me. Just give me a heads up before it happens. They can't always do it, but
no.
Yeah.
So there are also some areas that we share issues with, because ADHD and autism has a lot of crossover with symptoms, especially with regards to sensory issues. And we have a lot of shared sensory issues, although they sometimes affect us in different ways.
So one of the shared issues that we both have that actually, even in this day and age, surprisingly impactful, but it's getting less so because there's so many alternatives, is making phone calls. Like trying to run a household, book appointments, get people around, get someone to fix things for us, just getting a window cleaner in. Like, neither of us can make phone calls without it being unreasonably dramatic.
We only have a window cleaner because they turned up at the door one day and said, hey, do you need a window cleaner? And I went, yes we do, we've been talking about that for 6 months.
So another big one is, so to get anyone round, we have to communicate with them in text.
Yeah, text message, email, or Facebook Messenger is about it. It's the only thing we have Facebook for, is to, because that seems to be where all the tradespeople hang out.
Quite handy.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily we're in an era where more and more places have like chat functions. So the amount of things that I mean, like, I have this problem with your product, and they're like, phone us, and I'm like, no, no, I have a disability that means I cannot phone you. Can you deal with this? And the amount of times they're like, yes, here, it's solved. I'm like, why did you want me to phone when you could have just dealt with it just right now? But yeah, so you tend to do the talking to people and arranging things, and then I get to go to the door and manage them once they're here.
Yeah, because I'm not very good at that bit. I don't deal well with people in person. Well, I do, but I don't. It's hard to explain. I have a lot of social anxiety around new people in new situations, in particular.
That's just a result of different coping strategies coming out in different ways, and how, like, you can have the same symptoms but address them in different ways, and that's perfectly normal and valid as well.
I'm very avoidant. But that's also ties back into our sensory issues in general. Like, we both share sensory problems, issues. We're both highly sensitive to sound, light, that sort of thing.
The dripping tap is doing my head in. The fridge does your head in.
Yeah. So we make quite a lot of effort to make sure that the house is quiet and calm, as much as it can be with a dog that likes to bark. But yes, the fridge you mentioned that actually lives not in the kitchen where a normal fridge would live, because it makes too much noise.
That's banned from the house. That lives in a lean-to outside.
That does. It is connected to the house. All we have to do is open a door. It's not massively out of our way.
It's those little choices. Also things like where we have our Google Docs. Like, so I don't have a Google Doc in my office anymore because I'm not allowed to play music out loud anymore, because you can hear that annoying doing. You can just hear the beat. I'm sure everyone, when like a car goes past, you can just hear a beat, and some sound. Then, like, that's it.
That noise drives me insane.
So I now use headphones instead.
We both tend to use headphones most of the time. So, like, on a day-to-day basis, we're both going out around our work and business in entirely separate worlds because we've both got headphones on.
And again, that impacts our communication, that impacts how we've set up our home, that's how we have planned the house, how we run the household day to day. They're like all of these unspoken rules that we have as part of our homemaking. I think that's probably what it comes down to when we're talking about a lot of this stuff, is making the home work for you intentionally, thinking about these things and then putting those plans in place. And then someone who doesn't know the rules comes and visits.
But that's the key thing, is that we had to work out what our issues were and what could help those issues. But, I mean, before that we had to accept that our issues were okay, because not liking fridge noise is really weird. I can acknowledge that it is really, really weird. But it's something that genuinely causes me that much anxiety that I would live upstairs.
Oh, laptops. I'm not allowed a laptop downstairs.
No.
Like, I have hobbies that I would love to do while we're sitting downstairs in the living room together. And I've had to come up with alternative strategies to do them. So we bought a tablet because it has no fan. But then that has other issues. I can't type on anything. So notes, I take notes by hand and then type them up later, and that works actually surprisingly well. So yeah, it's all about that, recognising each other's symptoms are valid and caring about each other enough to take them into account, to change our own behaviours. Yeah. To make the household work for both of us.
What do I do to change my behaviour for you?
Oh, loads of stuff. You wait for me very patiently while I'm faffing when we leave the house.
You do a lot of faffing.
Which, as for someone with ADHD, that must be excruciating.
Yeah, no, it can be.
There's a whole mini routine to exit the house. I've got to make sure I've got all the things, everything has to be in place, I've got to check them multiple times, I've got to have my hat, I've got my headphones, my sunglasses, and the keys, make sure the keys are in the place, and then I've got to check my hat again, and then I've got to make sure I've got spare glasses. Sometimes I might have multiples of things with me.
Then we open the door and she's got to have her minute of panic and going, it's bright, where are my sunglasses, and I have to go find them for her.
When I've just put them in
When
my
you've
bag.
just put them away in the place that you needed them to be in order to leave the house.
Yes. That's happened on more than one occasion. So yeah, you're very patient with me then, which I do appreciate.
Yeah, we have to allow in a good 10-15 minutes extra time before the time we know we're going to have to leave.
We have faffing time.
We have faffing time.
Other things that we have to take into account are things like symptoms, like having a diagnosis or suspecting something. Like, we do that because we have these symptoms. We do that because of our lived experience. So things like the fatigue, like when I was particularly bad, like just going out would leave me drained for days.
It still does me.
And it still does for you.
Yeah.
Like I've got to a better place, so I can actually go to work now and it's not too much of a drama.
No, if we have a social occasion at the weekend, that's it. I have to be really careful the week after because I'm so tired after it.
And then that exacerbates everything. So that, of course, that's going to have a massive impact on homemaking because you're tired, and then that's going to mean there's going to be more mistakes. You're going to be clumsier. Your executive dysfunction is going to be worse. Your sensory issues are going to impact you so much more.
I mean, executive dysfunction, we should probably actually explain what that is. We've mentioned it a couple of times.
Yeah, you should.
Oh, I should, okay. Executive function is all of the tasks that you would need to carry out. It's the things that we kind of do throughout the day without really thinking about it. It's about organising your thoughts, organising what you need to do. I think that's sort of an explanation for it. It's
still very woolly. We both suffer from this a little bit, but I believe you more so is when you walk into a room, all of the tasks hit you simultaneously. Like, you look around the room, and if the room is messy, then it's not just, oh, I've got to tidy the room. It's, I've got to tidy the room so that I can mop, so that I can tidy, so that I can dust, so that I can... And it's like you see everything that happens
all at once.
Simultaneously. Yeah.
Simultaneously, and you feel you have to do all of it simultaneously. You can't... I guess that's the dysfunction part. You can't pick out the thing that you need to do first because in your head you need to do all of it right now.
So yeah, so imagine you go through your entire day with a complete lack of time or prioritisation ability. Like, you have to wake up and brush your teeth and do your hair and do things and go to and make breakfast and do everything you're planning to do that day all at the same time, and your brain doesn't say, right, well, this, then this, then this, then this. Your brain doesn't do that.
No, my brain goes, oh no, that's too much, let's go to sleep instead.
Yeah. And so I would say that that's executive dysfunction, is when all these executive things that you need to do are not functioning correctly. So you get overwhelmed quickly, easily. You've got to learn actual coping strategies to address that.
Which is why, for me, and if you watch any of our YouTube videos every now and then, you'll know that we talk about Fly Lady a lot and other cleaning routines, but mostly Fly Lady at the minute. That's actually been really helpful for me because that means there's a natural structure, there's a natural order that I don't have to think about. I know that that's what's supposed to be done, and then that, then that, then that, because someone else has told me that that's the order it needs to be done in.
Yeah, and then you can literally print out lists or write lists out, and then you can follow them, and then that gives you that time. What she also does is give you time bound as well, so that she's like, don't go to, you're not trying to wash the walls. When you're washing the floor, you've got 10 minutes to do your floor, and when you run out of time, that's it, you stop.
Yes. I'm not very good at stopping, but yes.
No, but it gives you permission to stop, so you then know, oh, this is the end of the task, which, again, quite important.
It's often why you get people with neurodivergencies who end up in this extreme cycle of hyper productivity followed by complete and utter burnout, and it's just a cycle, and that I go through that cycle quite a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it is much more manageable now that, like, we've got all of these things in place. Like, before we started Intentional Homemaking, like, it was so much harder.
It was, yeah. actually sitting down and thinking about what needed to be done, why it needed to be done, and who was going to do it made the world of difference, rather than it just being a house full of stuff that needed doing.
Yeah, just a random chaotic house full of to-do lists.
It's still a house full of to-do lists, just less chaotic.
It's just now we know who's supposed to be doing them and when.
Yeah.
But with that, is there not left to just one of us? Is there not, by knowing who does it when, it's not like we can both handle that so much easier, because there's not an assumption or leaving it to, like, I think I tolerate mess more than you do up to a certain point.
Which is, there's some irony in there somewhere, because I am messy. I'm naturally messy. I always have been. And yet I don't cope very well in mess. But I'm also not very good at tidying up the mess.
Whereas I'm not very good at, if I have to move something out of my way to get to the thing I want, that's not happening.
So then something else that we are currently in the throes of experiencing is how these can change over time. I mean, we already have experienced this because we've already gone through many changes in our life. But we're both now at an age where we're starting to consider things like the menopause or the perimenopause.
Which is another time where people with neurodiverse conditions, it's so much harder, and there's then another bow wave for people getting diagnosed, because that's more things that you then can't cope with.
Yeah, your symptoms become exacerbated by it. Another time for women in particular is either after they get married or move in with someone or have a child specifically. The minute you go from just being able to look after yourself, you can just about kind of get by with. But as soon as you have to look after somebody else, as well as yourself, then a lot of women find themselves being diagnosed at that.
Or when you have burnout at work, or like there's certain things, and it is so much better to get diagnosis before you crash. And again, it's just self-diagnosis is so valid. Like, most people would not get a diagnosis if they hadn't realised it themselves.
Yeah.
And then gone to the doctor with the evidence and went, hey, mine looked like quite a big folder. There was a little bit of a thud.
So, especially where we are and with the healthcare system we have, which is fantastic, with something like a neurodivergency as an adult, you have to know you have it before you can go and ask for a diagnosis of it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Generally. It's rare that you're not the one that suggests it.
Or someone around you might suggest
what I mean as a
it,
medical professional generally doesn't.
Yeah, and then you have to like really fight for a diagnosis, which is where the struggles we're having with you right now.
Yeah, is that you have to fight for even a test. It's been a journey, and a lot of it's my fault because I'm not very good at executive function tasks, like making appointments.
It's almost like you have autism and or ADHD and you struggle with the basic things that they ask you to do to get a diagnosis.
Yeah, so I'm not very good at the things that are required, which is so this is partly why it's taking so long. And also there's a real push at the minute, avoid diagnosing people.
Yeah, we've so many of our peers have gone for a diagnosis and we're like, yeah, you totally are. And they're like, yeah, you probably are, but we're not going to diagnose you because that would be inconvenient.
Yeah, no, the message is you're coping well enough, you don't need a diagnosis, keep going.
But the whole point of having a diagnosis is so that when you can't cope, you're not on a 2-year wait. And all of this, how you manage your home has a massive impact on how well or how not you're coping. So it is that knowing yourself and then working out what you need, what your symptoms are. Like, definitely go symptom-led.
Yeah.
Because rather than giving yourself a whole diagnosis, you can be like, oh, I have sensory issues. Oh, that means that I need there to not be Google Dots yelling at me all the way around the house.
Or the lights are too bright, so we'll put some lamps in instead, or whatever it is.
Or use different bulbs, use less harsh bulbs. You know, being clumsy. That's a common one.
I don't think there's much you can help with that.
Or making sure that you've got cloths to clean up with, making sure you've got self-care, being compassionate with yourself. Like, what you do and how you respond doesn't have to be physical. Like sometimes it's about that internal chatter.
So the internet is a great resource if you're looking for ideas on what to change or how to change it. We did it by having a lot of conversations with each other, and then every time a new issue comes up, we talk about how we can combat it, what we can do.
Well, we also talked, I did do a lot of research online and came up with a lot of ideas there, and we did talk to some of our friends who, hey, shock, we tend to pull together. When you find one neurodivergent person, you tend to find a bunch of them, because we tend to pull together.
I think all of our friends are neurodivergent in some way.
Yeah. So yeah, I think connecting to others, having space, and try not to gatekeep. Like we do see some people going, oh, if you don't have a diagnosis, then it's not real. And I definitely got that from my family.
Yeah, you had that experience.
Yeah, before I got my piece of paper of validation, I'm pretty certain I have autism. The amount of my very well-meaning, loving, amazing family were like, no, of course you don't. Why would you think that? It's like my entire lived experience.
Yeah, I can remember members of your family saying, well, you don't have a diagnosis, you can't be feeling that, essentially.
Yeah.
And it's like the symptoms don't go away just because you don't have the piece of paper.
It's so that's so backwards.
Yeah.
Of, oh, you can't have these symptoms because you don't have a diagnosis. Well, you're not going to get a diagnosis without those symptoms. That again, coming back to that self-validation, that and yeah, go get a diagnosis. You might be wrong, but
Yes.
then you get to hopefully get a different label, a more appropriate one, or find out what else it is, or address those symptoms in other ways.
Yeah, and then it's important to give yourself the grace to accept who you are and what you need. It's okay. It's okay to be weird and need the fridge outside, or to spend 10 minutes getting your bag in order, or...
I think that's the big thing with when it's a whole family. I mean, it's all about those conversations and us with each other. But if one of us was like, I need this, and the other's like invalidating it and wasn't being helpful, doesn't respect it, like it just takes one in the household for this whole thing to fall down.
Yeah, we're very lucky.
We are very lucky. And growing up in a household that doesn't get you is difficult, and that's there are genuinely a lot of people in that situation, which is just really hard. And again, going out, finding other people that understand, finding those communities, and then working out the things you can do.
But anyway, I think that's probably a good place for us to end. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any thoughts on neurodivergency in your home and how it affects you, or anything on that subject really, then do let us know. We love hearing your thoughts, and we are very well aware that we don't speak for all neurodivergent people at all, so we would love to hear your experiences too, because they are undoubtedly different to ours. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll speak to you soon.
Bye!